So if you're listening to the show, you might know that I have been going through shit lately. And this really made me think that I would love to offer my group program, the Urban Cleanse group program. But this time I am part of the group. I would like to go back to losing the weight that I gained these past couple of years. And I would like to feel better in my own skin. And I know a lot of you do too. And I do know that my program does work if I only did it myself. So if you'd like to join, please go on www.organolicious.ch, click on the Urban Cleanse button and join us. It'll be loads of fun. We'll do it together. I will be your support, your knowledge, as well as your team member. I'm looking forward to see you there. Thanks a lot.
Hi, I'm Martin Daubney, and I'm today's guest on So Freaking Healthy podcast. I'm a psychological coach based in Basel, Switzerland, and today we talk about stress, how to manage it, how it can derail your overall health, and the importance of breathing in managing your lifestyle.
Hello, Donna. Hello, Martin. How are you today?
All good, thank you. Yeah, thankfully the rain has stopped just for a little bit. I shouldn't say that because we've been missing the rain, but it was pretty heavy over the last couple of days.
Still raining on my end. I don't know what you're talking about, but okay. Yeah, the joys of all being in Switzerland and getting the same gray weather. So today we are joined by Martin Daubney. Martin, this is strange, actually, because Donna and I have only recently, as you all know, become besties in our podcast co-adventure. And we only really started meeting in February, but this so happens that Martin is one of those glue pieces that we're like, hey, we both know Martin. And up until now, it's when one of us knows the guest, the other one doesn't. So this is a new area for us that we both know Martin. And we were both like, yes, we need to have Martin on the show. And another first, you are our first gentleman guest. So
wow,
you are a lot of firsts.
Wow, it's like being the first man on the moon. It's fantastic.
Almost. It's like being the first man on the moon when about 20 women landed there already.
Yes. Yeah.
I love it.
I love that. Yeah. The assumption is, isn't it? And here I am after 20 women. Fantastic. And actually, when I saw a post on Facebook that you two were collaborating in some way, I thought, wow, that's a match made in heaven. You two are both powerhouses in your own right, but I can see the synergies and bringing something really spectacular out there. So
thank you. Yeah, I agree. It definitely is.
It's been a roller coaster so far, and we have good stuff planned. But yeah, so I'm happy that we're all here and that Switzerland is so small that we can know each other and not know each other all at the same time. So let's dive right into it. Starting, Martin, maybe it would be a good idea for our listeners, since we both know you, if you wouldn't mind giving us a small introduction, or a large introduction if you want, because you're the star today. An introduction on why you're here, why you're on a health podcast, the So Freaking Healthy podcast.
Oh, okay. Well, that journey, if I'm not keen on the word, but it seems to be well used, really started in my corporate life, which was just over 12 years ago when I moved actually to Switzerland. And yet, if I reflect back, I had been not that healthy all my corporate life, doing something that I was good at, sort of enjoyable, but never really loved in a way. It was capable, but never really loved what I was doing. It wasn't a passion. It was just something that I was all right at doing and people were okay having me. So not settling into what I really wanted to do took its toll. And if I think back, God, crikey, when I was about 30, I started experiencing atrial fibrillation. So my heart would flutter. And every time it would flutter in the morning, which, sometimes it's mistaken for love, but actually this was my heart fluttering out of beat. And I'd wake up, and when I stood up, things seemed to right themselves. And those episodes got longer and longer, and eventually got caught by a GP. and I got medicated, and that was it. Maybe I didn't need medication at that point. Maybe there was something else going on in me, which probably was stress. So I was stressed, not doing something that I was really passionate about, because I was doing something that I was good at. I was being paid well for it. And then, of course, had mortgage, kids, and all those things that go with it. So if I fast forward until about 2008, that stress thing never really, well, it did hit me. I did have those wake up at 2:00 in the morning moments with the panic of I needed to have done something. So therefore, not being refreshed when I went to work, and then you start to make mistakes, and then blah, 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 snowballs. But also seeing people around me actually disappear. And then there'd be a whisper, did you hear what happened to John? What? He collapsed at his desk, and they had to take him away by ambulance. Oh my God. And John was never seen again. And then it happened another time. And around about that time, I was reorganized out of the organization. I thought, what am I going to do? Well, the focus was on stress. People around me were stressed. I was stressed. And what am I going to do about it? So I started to learn all there is about stress and realized that stress can do all sorts of weird things to the body. And being on the So Freaking Healthy podcast, health comes in all shapes and sizes. Now, you are very much focused on the diet, which is fantastic, but the diet can't get into the body if the body's stressed. The digestive system bungs up. So understanding that is fundamental to good health and being so freaking healthy. Exercise too. When we exercise, if we're not exercising positively, if we're doing it because, I have to, I've been told I've got to exercise, got to do, the results come, but they take a lot longer to come because the mindset and the body isn't accepting the exercise. And it happens in so many other areas of our bodily system. So being so freaking healthy, diet is a huge part of it, but so is managing our stress state. And I learned over the years that we can affect our stress state for the better or the worse. My first foray into this was learning about stress management through my coaching certifications that I did, stress management and that sort of thing, performance at work. And then I branched out into emotional intelligence. So why is that important? Why is it important to understand what our emotions do? Well, if you understand what your emotions do, you can actually get yourself in a really better state so that your emotions aren't fighting you. You're actually working with them. You can understand more about you. Self-knowing is key. Self-actualizing is key to being at your best. And when you're at your best, everything inside works. I studied neuro-linguistic programming and can train it as well. But really that taught me about the language we talk to ourselves in. People who unfortunately stand in front of the mirror, God, I hate myself. That's doing a huge damage internally. You're stressing your system internally. And learning to love ourselves is probably key to being so freaking healthy too. And then through working with clients and stumbling on almost, trying a few different things. I had a client who had to go and give a presentation to a huge audience. And she was getting really, really anxious. So anxiety and stress go hand in hand. Anxiety really is a warning from your subconscious mind to think about what you want to happen rather than you're anxious because you're thinking about all the things you don't want to happen. So we worked on that. So shift your emotional state. I knew that breathing low and slow was going to calm you down. And we worked with those parameters and it was working. And I thought, well, this is great. But then I went to a conference and I heard someone else talking pretty much about the same thing that I was doing. And there was someone who's working with the HeartMath Institute in America. I thought, hello, what's this? And they were describing a process through breathing, through shifting the state, through focus, and you get to play with gadgets to measure it. I thought, well, this is right up my street. So then I started to learn all about that. So why I'm here is because there's so much we can do outside of food to help us really become so freaking healthy. And I believe managing our state to be in that best state possible is key to everything else.
Wow.
Love it.
Wow.
And I have to say, I think Megan knows, I'm super giddy about this because with every single episode that we've recorded so far, I kept mentioning stress and going, I promise, dear audience, we will have a full episode talking about stress because it'll make you or break you, right? If you have the most incredible diet ever, but you have chronic stress, you're not going to be healthy, right? So it is something that you have to tackle alongside for sure, but even before you look at your diet, because it is something that, it could bring autoimmune disease. It could bring really just, it wreaks havoc on your system.
Stress, if you look into it, if you really dive into what it does, stress in itself it's a response to an external environment. So that we experience it in a stressful way. Not everyone experiences the same thing as stressful. So we know it's an internal thing that we do to ourselves. And when we're in that stressed state, we're releasing a hormone called cortisol in bucket loads. And if there's the cortisol, the excess cortisol that causes the inflammation, that causes damage. So when you have stress, cortisol, inflammation, your body releases cholesterol. What does the doctor do? Go, give you a statin for that. It's not dealing with the problem of the stress. It's not taking the cause away. It's just masking the symptom. These elevated measurements that we have are messages from our internal system to say, there's something wrong inside, and sticking plaster over it isn't going to fix it. You need to figure out what's wrong inside before you then conclude that something else might need to happen. So I'm a great advocate for going to the root cause of stuff. When people come and see me, quite often, classic example, a lady who was really stressed. Now, can you imagine one of those elastic band balls that are really tight? And you say, really tight. And she came in and she sat in the chair opposite me and hunched her knees up to her chin, wrapped her arms around herself. And I said, what's going on there then? She said, through gritted teeth, I really hate my job. Okay, that's the symptom. What's going on? What's going on? So took the layers away, digging deeper and deeper. And she started to move in the chair. I said, and what's going on for you? She said, wriggled a bit. She said, I can feel the tension lifting. So just by really being able to get people to explore, we can dive into what's really the root cause and do something about the root cause to lift up the symptoms of the stress. Now, we worked together for about 6 weeks. And at the end of the 6 weeks, I said to her, so how are you now? Because you came in and you're really tense and I can see you're more relaxed. She said, well, I still don't like my job. I said, yeah, but have you noticed how you don't like your job? She said, what do you mean? She's like, shrug her shoulders. Yeah, I don't like my job. When you came in, it was like, really tense and tight. She said, yeah, the stress has lifted. Now, a little codicil to this particular lady was that during our conversation, and for no reason at all, she said, my husband and I decided not to have children. So don't know where that came from. So I looked at her and I said, have we? And she said, yeah, we have. Yeah, I'm okay with it too. I thought, I don't think so. None of that was congruent to me. But I left it there because, not my business if children is not a thing. However, the stress was lifting and so on. You know what's happening here. 3 months later, she called me and said, I've got something to tell you. I said, what is it? She said, I'm pregnant. I said, well, that's fantastic. But she wasn't saying any more. I said, why are you telling me this? She said, it was the stress. You helped me lift the stress. And when my stress was removed from my body could respond normally. And I said, are we happy? And she said, actually, yes, we are both happy. And I later went on to meet the baby and the husband and everything, totally happy. And of course, the good news is she went back to work and she likes her job.
That's amazing. And it's amazing that the kid didn't bring back the stress.
Yeah.
But that's just...
No, that's later. That's later. Yeah, I know. So stress can really shut down our systems. And so managing it, I think, is critical to living not only a healthy life, but as full a life as you can and an enjoyable life.
All right, guys, listen up. Megan is doing a pretty poor job at publishing our episodes on time. I work hard, I edit everything, and then she takes her sweet ass time. Don't get me wrong, I love her to pieces, but she really needs to get her ducks in a row. So sign up to our mailing list and you'll be the first to know when a new episode is out. Just click the link in the show notes to sign up.
So you mentioned that obviously you transitioned from corporate life into coaching and being self-employed. And because you were driven to understand stress. Now, what was the motivation behind actually becoming a coach and coaching other people with how to manage stress versus just kind of learning it for yourself? And how has that kind of changed your outlook on life and kind of your life direction?
That's a really interesting question because actually it was my wife. It's funny. I did go and seek other corporate jobs. And a friend of mine even got me an interview to do some I was in corporate communications and to do some communication work on a project that he had. I'd been self-employed for about 3 or 4 years. And I was in two minds because I thought, if I go back into the workplace, will I lose my role as this coach that people know me for now? And then it's a short-term project. What happens after that and so on. But the interesting feedback from the interview was the HR lady said he could totally do this job. Of course he can. He just doesn't want to. So there was something, I was not happy being that employee. And it's Carol, my wife, who, when the changes were happening, I said, what am I going to do? She said, you would make a really good coach. And I talked to a couple of other people about it. And in the company that I was leaving, they don't have internal coaches, but they do have people that kind of help shape meetings and that sort of thing. And I talked to a couple of them and was getting the thumbs up. So, yeah. And that company also kind of sponsored me through my training, which was rather nice. So it wasn't a kick out the door with nothing. So paying for flights, accommodation and the course fees for all the coaching certificates I did. So felt supported as well. Of course, as Dana knows, when you go out on your own, you think, I know what I'll do. I'll get some business cards and some leaflets and a website and people will come.
They'll fly in through your door.
Yes, they will. So then, of course,
FYI, listener, they don't. Go on.
Yes, they don't. So I needed help in the business side. And it was a huge transformation for me because having had probably 30 years in corporate organizations where you do things this way because that's how we do it, all of a sudden, and it took me too long to realize I could do things anyway because I'm by myself. I can make my own decisions. So I needed the help of a mentor to just open a few doors in my brain to get creative and be brave enough to put myself out there. And that sounds silly, but from corporate world to external, it was very difficult to move into that place where people might say, oh, look at him. Who does he think he is? Again, it took me rather too long to realize if they're thinking that of me, how wonderful they're thinking of me. And rather than they're ridiculing me. So what? If they got time in their day to think of me, oh, what a blessing.
That's a great way to look at it because a lot of people go through what they call now an imposter syndrome, which I don't think I've heard before the last couple of years. But it's true. It's a lot of people, especially people who are running their own business, go through that where, you just kind of think, am I really that person that I'm presenting out there to the world?
Yeah. I mean, I remember the first coaching certificate I did. It was a 5-day full-time course. And the guy at the end said, okay, you're all coaches now, go out and coach. I thought, really? I couldn't possibly. So I need more. And that's the other thing that happens. Maybe you've experienced yourself that, oh, look, there's a certificate course that just fits what I'm doing. I'll just do that before I really push myself up. Oh, there's this as well. And I'm a victim of that learning mentality. I do have a few certificates from various organizations, but they all fit in to the underlying foundation of managing stress and building performance. So there isn't anything I've done that doesn't support that work. And the other big shift is, for 30 years, someone would put some money in my bank account. I didn't have to ask for it.
Mm-hmm.
Going out there, I'm delivering a service and I'm asking to be paid. I ask you to give me money for sitting in front of me. And that really was difficult. It was difficult to the point that when I started, I would ask after the session, okay, that'll be, and it was really quite low, 150 francs. And people would give me the money. I thought, well, that's okay. These days, no. We decide what the package is, you pay me up front, and then we deliver.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a completely down the other way.
But I think that comes from, you've been coaching now for over 10 years. And obviously, when you introduced yourself, the number of topics that you hit, I was trying to keep track of like all the topics that you were hitting just in your introduction, going, okay, yeah. I gotta ask him about all this stuff now. It just, but it shows that, like you said, I think that you manage this learn to grow aspect that everybody, I think all the coaches really like to learn, right? And when you try to put it in practice, but I think you've done a really good job of putting it into practice and being able to, in Basel, at least, I'm not sure about Zurich, but in Basel, if you say Martin Daubney, most people know who you are if you're at a corporate, because you led a corporate conference or you've done some kind of class at the big pharma tech companies. So I feel like you were able to transition, but it's 10 years, more than 10 years. So it's not a switch overnight. And I think that when you talk now, I was impressed when I met you. I think I met you in 2018.
Yeah.
And it was just so impressive to hear you talk and be so confident about yourself. But you have to understand that, in all areas of anybody's life, we have this kind of imposter syndrome, but it's elevated when you are in front of an audience or virtual or real. And that's a form of stress in itself, is to overcome that feeling of not being the expert that in your head you feel like you could and you will be. But what's that line when you cross the line? Oh, now I'm an expert. Oh, wait, no. Now I'm an expert.
No, still learning. So I don't know if you've heard the Gallup Strengths Finder. It's an assessment that you do online, and it's run by the Gallup organization in America. And there are 34 talents. They break them down into 4 different groups. And just say my number 1 is adaptability. So most of the time, if something gets thrown at me, I can go, okay, well, maybe I have to do it in a different way. And number 5 is maximizer, which means that I always want it to be better. So, or I'm maximizing the opportunity I have in front of me. But for me, it kind of plays out in, you can't have it yet because I haven't finished it. Now I've got to get over that. You've got to get over that. And to the point that I rather too much, and this is self-feedback, like to be the sage on the stage, the one with the knowledge to impart. And what I'm trying to shift to is to be the guide on the side. So help you come forward and bring up with your own ideas rather than me telling you. But that said, there are times when I've been fortunate enough to be invited on the stage, and my own stress management techniques helped me. I remember the first time, so here's one of your tangents. I remember the first time was in Washington, D.C. for the American Association of Pharmaceutical Sciences. And I had a slot, and I was talking about the clear your head stuff and being in the best state possible. And I'm not really one for writing a script and learning it, but I will have bullet points, and I know I can talk around the bullet points, and I will make sure there's a flow to what the story is. And I started to go through my talk and time it and go through and time it, because you have to fit into a time slot. And every time I did it, I thought, oh, you missed that bit out. Oh, damn. Okay, do it again. Yeah, you got that bit in, then you missed something out. And I was winding myself up just before getting on the stage. And I stopped and I breathed down, and I just said to myself, it's not about you, it's about your audience. And they want to see you having fun. Go out and have fun. And that allowed me to just relax a bit and then interact with the audience and have some off-the-cuff ad-lib stuff that went in that got people laughing and enjoying themselves. And for me, that really changed this stiffness that can come in with standing on the stage and so on. I was doing something similar down in Geneva last month, and we were talking about communication and effective communication, and how when we're stressed, we snap at people, and it's often your partner that will tell you, "Bit stressed, darling." No. Full stop. We don't often recognize it at ourselves, but if you can manage your state and have meaningful conversations, they're better conversations. And there's an element of empathy in that. So here comes the emotional intelligence piece, putting yourself in the place of the other person and maybe understanding what they're going through and so on. So an example of an ad lib, I just, who in the audience, and there are about 80 people there, feels they're empathic. Nobody put their hands up. I said, we all psychopaths in this audience or something? Then you get a laugh. And then when you get a laugh, people are relaxing and all that. So I know that works. I kind of know that's a technique that I've stumbled into, but it helps me relax and it helps them relax, and we all have a better time.
Hey guys, did you know that we publish an episode every 3 weeks on Sunday? Yeah, I know, that's an awesome schedule. Well, we try to publish an episode every 3 weeks on Sunday, but frankly, we're not doing such a great job of it. I don't want to name names, but it's Donna. She is such a perfectionist when it comes to editing, and we love her for it. But if you sign up for our mailing list, we will let you know every time a new episode is live. Just click the link in the show notes to sign up.
I actually heard something really interesting lately, and I was trying to remember if Megan, maybe you told me this or someone on the podcast. We were talking about stress and anxiety, and apparently athletes, Olympic athletes, were asked, how do you overcome the fear, the stress, the anxiety that you have before going out there and performing? And basically what they found out was that those athletes take that, and it's the same stress, right? It's the same, It's the same thing that happens in our body, but they translate it into excitement.
Yeah.
Right? So they're going out there, they're as stressed as I would. Okay, a little bit less stressed because I do not run marathons, but they would be as stressed as I would, I don't know, going and doing whatever I'm good at and doing it. But they just take it and go like, yes, I'm ready. And they're jumping and they're wiring themselves up, and then they bolt and they do whatever they're there to do. And that helps them to perform. And I find that explaining that to people also, and just kind of having them see it in a different way, meaning seeing their stress as something maybe it's not always positive, but trying to translate it, instead of stage fright, to just, I'm super excited to be able to share my, my knowledge with the audience, is a completely different experience.
Yeah, 100%. There's a beautiful study by a lady called Kelly McGonigal, who followed people who thought stress was good for them until they died, and a group of people who thought stress was bad for them until they died. There's a 10-year gap. 10 years, you can live 10 more years if you truly believe. And it's an emotional thing to believe, and logical and emotional together, to truly believe that when I feel stressed, it's something good's happening. My body's getting me ready for something. And you can live 10 not stressed out years because you think it's good. So 10 good years. But you're talking about excitement and anxiety. Neurologically, in the brain, they're wired very, very similarly. And somatically in the body, we feel them in much the same way. And we're lucky, really, as human beings, to be able to, emotional intelligence again, self-know what we're feeling and make a choice to shift. And we can do that all the time. Now, anxiety will release cortisol. Excitement will release DHEA, dehydroxyepiandrosterone. You can buy that on the internet, but you don't have to. You can make your own by shifting your state into a more positive energy, emotional state rather than an emotion that drains you. So fundamentally, when you know what you're feeling and you can label it and go, oh, well, that's interesting, I'm feeling anxious. I wonder what would happen if I felt excited. Can I turn this into excitement? Then the hormone cascade in your body changes and it becomes much more fueling rather than draining. Yeah.
I have 2 points. The first one is I feel like we've got this like beautiful crossover to Anna Stando's episode on gratitude, because one of the things that I had told her was I find it very difficult to do this kind of daily gratitude thing. And she said, well, add the why, like, why am I grateful for something? And I feel like someone could very easily sit down at their desk or wherever they're doing their morning journaling or whatever, and you feel the stress of whatever the day is because it's full or because it's important or whatever. And you're writing down, I'm grateful for this energy that's in my body because it means that I am excited about what's going to happen or whatever. But I think even reframing it this way, using gratitude alongside this helps shift that, shift the mentality to, I call it positive and negative stress. That's how I refer to like excitement, I think, is positive stress, and anxiety and because like you said, stress can be good. And I think that, like you said, if you see stress as a good thing, then your body can handle it better.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We can even train ourselves to have a capacity to handle stress. So we can, I mentioned the HeartMath Institute earlier. The studies they did, a very, very simple technique is what I was doing before I met them was to breathe low and slow. So you slow down your breathing and breathe deeper into your belly. So we all know that, breathing's really, really important. It's highly underrated, in my opinion. We should do more of it, at least intentionally. So you breathing down and slow calms the nervous system down. Now, if you focus while you're doing that, focus in the area of your heart, good. And there's all sorts of reasons. We can have another chat about that, why you would focus on your heart. But one of the reasons is it stops all that going on in the brain or the worry or the whatever it is. So you just shut that off for a minute, focus on your heart, breathe low and slow, and then get into that emotional state. Now you can draw a 2x2 grid and you can have emotions in various corners. But the one that is low heart rate and is regenerative, bottom right-hand corner, is when you shift yourself into care, appreciation, gratitude, love, any of those real positive energy states. And you're doing it in a calm way. And you will then start to find over a period of time how there's a synchronization in the heart-brain system. Now, there's a lot of science behind that, and there's a superhighway between the heart and the brain. And the heart sends more information to the brain than the brain does to the heart, like 90% up, 20% down. Well, the brain's got its own neurology, it's got its own inherent brain, heart brain. So when you get that system aligned, then we go back to all the other systems. So your digestive system becomes aligned. Your immune system, that'd be nice, that becomes aligned. Your cortisol drops, your DHEA goes up, get chilled out. Then, wow, do that in the workplace. Then you can start making really clear-headed decisions instead of taking a decision in the fog. The kicking of the dog when you come home because you're angry disappears. You sleep better. I mean, sleep is another topic. It's a huge, huge thing to get good sleep. So all these systems in our body change so much for our own well-being and mental clarity that you get in, with practice, bit of time. I know from I disclosed earlier, atrial fibrillation, that's gone, my blood pressure's dropped. So much more healthy blood pressure. And, these things are easily attainable with a little bit of practice.
You brought up a couple of really, really interesting things that I wanted to touch because, when you talked about the deep breathing, deep, slow breathing and everything like that, that is a form of meditation.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of people, that we speak to on a daily, I'm sure you experience the same, would say, I cannot meditate. I don't know how to do it, or I'm doing it wrong, or I can't shut off my brain. And a lot of people don't understand that meditation doesn't necessarily mean I'm not thinking about anything, but rather that I'm at a state where I'm managed to relax my body, meaning you can still think. It's impossible not to think. But when you're actually not in your own head, so you can think about your own breathing, which will therefore put you in a meditative state, which will therefore put you in a calmer place and not anxious, which then shifts from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic nervous system, which means that you're actually in a rest and digest rather than a fight or flight mode.
Yeah.
Which just, it's just kind of like taking everything that you said and putting it into a ball and explaining to everyone that it is doable, even just with focusing on your breath, which is probably the simplest and most bioavailable form of meditation that every single person out there can actually do. And, it's just, they're just everyone can benefit more from it, right?
Yeah. When I was first introduced into meditation, the guy said, focus on the air coming in through your nose. And if you breathe in, you'll notice it's cooler than when you breathe out. And that's the thing. So it's about focus. And you're right. I don't think you can not think of anything. And unless you really train very, very hard. But I focus on my heart, because this heart brain, they call it coherence, and you can measure it, and you can see it on an app through a measuring device that measures your heart rate variability. It all comes together. And the more I do it, the stronger that connection becomes. So yeah, I focus on the heart, and it takes away the need to focusing on, I don't know, paying the bill, or what's for dinner, or, how's my mum, or anything like that, that really gets in the way of the meditation. Now, if you're a beginner and you've never done it before, you might be able to do that for 30 seconds. But with practice, you can really do that for 5-10 minutes. And it takes, even if you calm yourself down with the breathing, it takes a good 20 to 30 seconds to get out of your head and into your heart. Yeah. And then you're dealing with the world through compassion and gratitude and joy and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yesterday I was feeling, a little overwhelmed. And it's amazing though, when you've done it a while, and I just lay in my couch, eyes open at the ceiling. I wasn't tired. I just needed to breathe. And I was just breathing and looking at the ceiling. I wasn't thinking about anything, or let's say I couldn't remember if I was thinking about whatever I was thinking about. And then I had set a timer for 5 minutes so that in case I accidentally fell asleep, I would get up, right? Because I can fall asleep very fast, but I wasn't tired. And it's amazing. The timer went off way before I thought 5 minutes was up, because a lot of people also think 5 minutes is a long time. Like, first of all, you think, 5 minutes is not a long time. But then when you sit there and just breathe, 5 minutes becomes a very long time until you practice this. And then it was like, I realized I had gotten in such a good, relaxed state that 5 minutes went by so fast. I'm like, I just need another 5 minutes of this wonderful joy that I'm in, because it felt so good to just empty my brain of everything that was in it for 5 minutes. Yeah.
I mean, that's really, really cool. I mean, other people listening to this, talking about breath work might, and there's lots of ways you can breathe. My preferred is low and slow. Slow it down, and a nice, easy, comfortable rhythm. But I wonder how many times people who are listening to this might have picked up the phone and heard a voice they hadn't heard before, and then about 30 seconds later realized they haven't taken a breath, or open that email that says redundancies and realize they haven't taken a breath. So many times we do things and we suddenly realize I haven't been breathing properly. And that, to your point, Dana, puts your autonomic system out of sync or out of balance. What we're really trying to do is get you into that parasympathetic dominance, slightly more dominant. Balance would be great, but we are living in a sympathetic overload environment. Too much news fear, too much, there's the conflict in Ukraine and prices going up and blah, 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 all sorts of things. And of course, it stimulates the fear in us, which stimulates the cortisol and the subsequent consequences. If we can know that and recognize that and manage that in our bodies, we give ourselves a much better chance of thriving through this rather than not.
Martin, I think we know that we could talk to you for 3 hours. Unfortunately, your time is very short for us today. So to kind of wrap up a little bit, I have a question and then an ask. Number one, the question is, how do people realize that they're under chronic stress? Because I think some people have been under chronic stress for such a long time that they may not realize because they've adapted so well, but they're still have that high cortisol level. And then the ask is, how does your new book, how could they use your new book to help them learn how to manage their stress?
Oh, thanks for bringing that up. That's a bonus. The understanding that we are stressed is difficult because we have in our bodies baroreceptors. They're on our heart. And when the cortisol comes and the blood pressure goes up and all that, if it's sustained, then the body goes, oh, this is the new normal then, is it? Okay, I'll just readjust my little gauge here to shift the red high blood pressure down into normal. And you go on. High blood pressure also, you feel quite good with high blood pressure. So it's very difficult to tell. Most of the time, it comes out in a behavior. So it could be, being snappy with people you love, or people you used to get on with at work no longer want to get on with you. You might decide that it's a useful thing to have a glass of wine or a whiskey or something before you go to bed as you relax in the evening. I'll relax with this, which is it's a misnomer because it's a suppressant rather than a relaxant, and you don't get good quality sleep. You wake up tired. Waking up tired is also a good thing. Start making mistakes, find it difficult to make decisions that you used to thought were easy, and so on and so forth. You can also have a blood test. If you do a fasting blood in the morning, you can get a cortisol check. But behaviorally, things have changed, and more often than not, it's going to take someone who really loves you to point it out, much as, in any of these things.
And to bear the brunt of the backlash of saying, you're stressed. And then they're like, no, I'm not stressed.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that. Now, in the book, we have a look at all different aspects of what we've been talking about. Really, it's quite light, quite easygoing. And towards the end of each chapter, there's a little bit that says, here's some things you might try. So there are tips and things that you can do. And at the end, there's actually a QR code that will take you to a complimentary book and call as well, if that's what you'd like. So
excellent. Yes. Thank you so much. So the book is Clear Your Head to Get Ahead, which is a fantastic title. And I know that you've latched on to this saying, and I think it's a very catchy and it can stick with you. So I have the book. I'm on chapter 3. I haven't gotten all the way through it yet, but I'm excited to finish reading it because I know people in my life that are stressed. Donna, maybe I gift you one so you can read it as well.
Yes, please. I was just about to order it, but I will take the gift.
Oh, great. So, Martin, thank you so very much. I feel cheated. I feel cheated because we don't have enough time with you today. And so we will definitely try to get you again when we can have more time. Although I still think that we should cap our time with Martin because otherwise we'll spend half a day talking about stuff. So
which is fine. Just the editing is going to be a pain.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
So, and I think, Martin, you're at inspirecoaching.com. Okay, inspirecoaching.com. He has program from stress to strength. The book is Clear Your Head to Get Ahead. There's all these different ways to find Martin, and he's an absolute gem of a person. And so lovely to talk with you today. Thank you so much, Martin.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's been my pleasure.
Oh my goodness. Martin is a wealth of information. I'm really sad that our conversation couldn't be longer, but there was just so much I wanted to say, and I know we didn't get a chance to say it. So what were your initial thoughts about like anything that Martin said that you're just like, didn't think about that in a while, or what? Tell me, what was your first impressions?
I just resonated a lot with what he said. I think it was a lot of things that he said we brought up kind of randomly on other episodes. And of course, the sleep, when he was talking about the sleep, and on our sleep episode, we talk about how stress is important and promise a new episode on that. And so I think there was a lot to resonate with. And just to hear his kind of knowledge about, it was funny when he was talking about the heart brain connection.
Mhm.
It's again a relatively new discovery, right? We always thought that the brain was the computer, the hard drive, and it controlled everything in our body, right? That's how we were growing up being told. And we now talk about the gut brain axis
Mhm.
and how the communication goes more up than it does down. And when he mentioned it about the heart, I was like, no freaking way. Like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, there was a lot of resonating, and yeah, you could just listen to his voice for for decades. I really hope that we get a chance to talk to him again, because I think there has, I saw us both going like, oh, and oh, I can't, I want to say something else, and both looking at the time, going like, no, but yeah. What about you?
So what I stuck with, and I didn't get a chance to talk about it with him on the phone, but I thought would as a kind of a bridge is the cortisol thing, right? So cortisol, our stress hormone, it can be measured, which I think is super important for people to understand. I mean, Martin touched on it briefly. You can do a fasting blood test. I think you can even spit in a cup to get your cortisol levels. I've seen that somewhere else. And we talked about breathing, but what we didn't talk about was movement, right? Because actually, your cortisol levels will go down when you start to move,
Yeah.
right? So that's why I think that some people, maybe it doesn't resonate with them to sit and breathe in a chair. Maybe the better resonation with those people would be to get up and go for a 10-minute walk, right? Because everybody always kind of feels a little bit better when they walk. Why? When you're walking, when you're stressed, is because your cortisol levels go down, right? Because the cortisol was supposed to help you run away from said, mythical mammoth tiger or whatever, long saber-toothed tiger.
Yeah.
So I think that that's also another thing that's kind of built into our bodies. If you start to move, your cortisol levels will go down. And if you're doing an exercise that requires you aerobic, then you're taking those big, deep breaths. You're breathing a lot more, which then you're not even having to think about the breath. So I think that those are the two things that I thought, mm, I would have I would have wanted to talk a little bit more about that with him. And, but I feel like it's another entry point for people who don't feel like sitting on a cushion, although you don't have to do that. You can just sit anywhere and just breathe. But movement is super important in that area.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because sports was actually one of the things that I was biting my tongue, trying to keep myself from bringing up, because I know it's just a Pandora's box, but there's two sides to that coin as well, which I really want to pick his brain about, because exercise is also a form of stress, right? And when you overdo it,
Yeah.
in any form, right? If you're overdoing it, meaning 7 days a week, 2 hours a day, whatever, or if you're overdoing it when your body is just exhausted and you feel like you just have to work out,
Yeah.
those could backfire as well.
Right.
So definitely on our list to talk to him or any other stress expert that's going to come on this show, is definitely the connection with stress and working out, stress and exercise. Is there too much of it? Is there not enough of it? All of those kind of levels, and where is that happy medium?
Yeah. I know you don't. I know you used to work out a lot, but you don't actually actively do workout sessions now because you're a mom and you chase two teenage boys around, which is a workout in itself. But what I think is interesting is listening to your body, right?
Mhm.
Because there has been times when I'm supposed to go to the gym. I don't feel like I want to go to the gym. I go to the gym, I get on the treadmill, I walk or run, whatever, for 10 minutes. And then I'm like, no, And then I have to just turn around and walk back. But I feel like that's, again, when we're talking about being freaking healthy, it's about listening to your body. We've said it's probably 100 times already. The more you listen to your body, and that goes into what he was talking about, intuition, right? As well as intuitively listening to your body and going, yeah, no, this what I'm doing right now is not helping me mentally or physically because my body is too stressed or whatever, like, or maybe I'm on the verge of being sick, or maybe I've just had really bad sleep. I mean, whatever the reason is,
If you're on your period, if you're,
yeah, you just can't push it. You just got to listen to it. But on the other hand, like, for example, the last 2 evenings when my husband was done with work, he was like, the first 2 evenings ago, he was like, I just want to sit here and I don't want to do anything. Work was difficult. And he just kind of vegged out on the couch, played his games, watched TV, did nothing. Well, last night it was the same thing. And he's sitting on the couch and I'm like, please go to the gym. Just go to the gym and row for 10 minutes. You will feel better. You will feel better. And he sat there for another 15 minutes. I kicked him in the ass. He got out the door. He comes back. The first thing he says is, that so worked. That really worked. Like, he felt like he could have his whole evening ahead of him then, instead of just sitting on the couch and wishing the evening would be done.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing, I know we don't want to go too late on this, but the other thing that I think we didn't really dive into was breath work. And what he was talking about was the breath work, like low and slow and deep, low and slow breathing. And I recently had an experience with another health coach, Vanessa, who's in Basel, and she does yoga and breath work. And I was with her one day and it was just the two of us, and we did a breath work session. And I have never done that kind of breath work before. So I'd love to have her on, because it was all done on the floor and she guided me, but it was really more of like a push in and out. Like, it was much faster. You almost felt like you were hyperventilating. And then just when you think you're like, how much longer can I do this? Then she's like, okay, rest for a little bit. And then we did it again, like 3 times for like a total of 15 minutes. And afterwards, you just like, it was a really interesting feeling in my body that I haven't experienced before. Have you done that kind of intricate breath work, which is not just low and slow, but somehow like rapid here and this and that? Have you done that?
Yeah, I've done it. I honestly can't pinpoint where I've done it and what I've done, but yes. And I've also, I don't know if you've tried the 4-7-8.
Yeah, definitely. And I also recommend it to a lot of people. Yes, I've done it before with the tongue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that one, I remember when I did it the first time, I was like, I came out of it like from a trance. Like, when you do it right and you're kind of doing it properly in a way, it puts you in this kind of like, I can't even explain that. I guess that's what it feels like when your brain gets enough oxygen, right? So there are so many out there. There's the 6-6-6. There's the, like 6-7-8, whatever it is that you're doing. If it's just 3 deep breaths, belly breaths, right? 3 deep breaths where you're really extending your belly and pushing down your esophagus, you're already going to benefit from that. So, one can Google breath work for days and find whatever works for them. But what I would definitely recommend is just try something.
Yeah.
Whether it's the low and slow, whether it's the 4-7-8, whether it's literally just taking 3 deep breaths. When you're focusing on your breathing, you're calming down. Doesn't matter who you are and what you're going through. Just focusing on that it's just a form of meditation in a way. So the opportunities are endless. But what Martin said, and I always say it quite often, so I had to Google when he said it. I always say, like, you're breathing anyways, right? You're doing it, so just do it a little bit more mindfully for just a little short amount of time. Just take advantage of the fact that you're doing it and just do it deeper and do it a bit more kind of like focused. So he said it in a similar way, and I was like, yep. But yes, I think it's so important. We really don't breathe.
No, we don't. I just recently watched the Lost City, the new Sandra Bullock, Channing Tatum movie. I don't know if you've seen that yet.
No.
So in the movie, Channing Tatum is supposed to be kind of a ditzy model, and Sandra Bullock is this well-educated but turned romance novel writer. And they end up being on a real adventure together. That's the whole point of the movie, right? And she's put in 2 or 3 times, she's put into a situation where she starts to panic, right? And then you stop breathing, like what Martin said. And it was funny because the way that the Channing Tatum character handled that was he goes, "Hey, do you smell that? Do you smell that? No, take a breath." Totally was like, she took a couple deep breaths. She goes, "No, I don't smell anything." He's like, "But just keep breathing." Like, and he did it, I think, twice in that show. And it was like, oh, that is such a beautiful way, especially like for children, where, you just need to snap their attention away. And but if you just say, breathe, yeah, maybe they will, but they're still in their head. If you can snap their attention to something else completely, do you smell that? It smells like bacon, or, or whatever. Pick a lovely flavor.
Oh, I would go for fart. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, but I think that there was lots of little nuggets of wonderfulness in that episode for our listeners. But if our listeners have, if you've tried something, or if you have some thoughts on your own about, or maybe like your own story about how breath work or breathing, or how you came out of a stressful situation, totally hit us up. We will leave all the links to connect with us in the show notes. But I think, Donna, should that wrap it up for this episode?
100%. Thanks so much for joining us today, and see you next time on the So Freaking Healthy podcast.
Bye. Hey, you're still listening. Great. Okay, now I can tell you about my 12-week goal setting session. So in this 1-hour session, I'm going to help guide you through a powerful process inspired by the best-selling book, The 12-Week Year. I know. Everybody at this time of the year starts to think about year-long goals. And I would argue that year-long goals are really hard to contextualize. What is going to be happening in a year from now? You have no idea. But 12 weeks gives you a little bit better understanding, because you kind of already have your calendar booked out for the next 12 weeks, kind of know what's going to be going on. So if you can focus your goals on the next 12 weeks, you can make some really big actionable steps towards your long-term vision. So in this 1-hour session, we do talk about long-term vision. We talk about where you want to be. We talk about what your 5-year, 10-year, 3-year, all those goals are. But that's only a brief part. We know we see the long distance view, but let's break that down. And then we get into the 1 to 3 strategic 12-week goals that are going to get you to those long-term vision. Then we're going to put that into a really cool action plan with like checklists and timing and all that jazz to make sure that you are clear and that you have accountability to get those goals done. And then that's not it. Then we are going to tackle your roadblocks, because you have roadblocks. So we're going to tackle those roadblocks. We're going to create a plan to overcome them. So when you start to self-sabotage, what you can do to get around those roadblocks. Okay, so if this is interesting for you, it is only 1 hour of your time, and it's only 45 Swiss francs. I host this gig over on Fiverr, but I'm also going to put a link down in the show notes. So if you're interested, hit me up.